Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. An important question we face today is whether or not man can live with his nuclear technology and what effect, if any, the production of nuclear energy is having on both mankind and the environment. This impact is in part being determined by looking at the effects on the wildlife living in the waters and the forests surrounding nuclear reactors. The study of these animals provides a barometer to measure effects on humans and the environment. Recently, we were invited to observe the studies being made at the Nuclear Materials Production Reactor site near Akin, South Carolina, by scientists at the University of Georgia's Savannah River Ecology Laboratory. This laboratory is located in South Carolina, here at the United States Department of Energy's Savannah River plant. This 300-square-mile densely wooded federal installation has been designated a National Environmental Research Park. 3 operating reactors are located in the midst of the vast environmental research park. In this nuclear reactor are produced such materials as tritium and plutonium for the nation's defense programs. In addition, isotopes are produced for cancer treatment and other medical uses. This production of radioactive materials requires sophisticated monitoring to safeguard the environment. In case of an accidental release of radioactive material into the air, sensors would relay the collected data into the meteorological laboratory, where computers would forecast speed, direction, and altitude of the released material. The streams of the area are sampled continually to ensure that no radioactive contaminants or other pollutants are escaping and endangering man or animal. Consideration must also be given to the water pumped through the reactors to cool them. This water, carrying away waste heat, is discharged into canals and travels for several miles before entering the Parr Pond reservoir system. The potential effect of these heated waters upon wildlife is of concern and has resulted in the development of an active program of environmental monitoring and research at the Savannah River plant site. This research was begun in 1952 under auspices of the Atomic Energy Commission. The wildlife research being conducted here at the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory is under the direction of University of Georgia Associate Professor Dr. Alligator Brisbane, or Briz as he's known to his colleagues.
The principal purpose of our studies here is to evaluate the various environmental impacts of energy production, especially in the case of nuclear energy. This requires research in all aspects of basic ecology so that we can improve our ability to predict in advance any effects that the nuclear industry may have on our environment. Some of these effects we're studying will become apparent, Marlin, when we reach Parr Pond.
Many species of wildlife live in the forests of this environmental research park. Our entry into the woods has startled a bobcat. These animals are important because they are predators. The research being done here has indicated that if the radioactive contaminants are present, they may accumulate most in the bodies of predators. Although some of the animals of this area are found in the woods, a greater number are found in the vicinity of the reservoir called Parr Pond. These open waters are used by several thousand waterfowl each winter, and since some of these may enter the human food chain, they become of special concern. Some, like the wood duck, also nest in the area. All become potential subjects for radioactivity research. Here, near where the heated water enters, the pond temperature is much warmer than at the reservoir's lower end. It's important to determine what effect this has on wildlife, and that's part of a study occurring in an area just ahead. A short distance from where we entered the reservoir, we have reached the area where, according to a radio call Dr. Brisbane received earlier, some preliminary work is being done with a 12-foot male alligator that has just been caught. As part of a reproductive study, it will be fitted with a radio telemetry transmitter. This will allow it to be located and recaptured at intervals. Because of warmer water in this end of the reservoir, male alligators may enter their annual breeding season too early, and that might cause a decrease in reproduction and endanger them here. The radio telemetry unit attached will broadcast a signal on its own particular frequency. It floats 18 inches above the collar on the animal and is being securely attached by clearance bagshaw. The researchers must be especially careful in their release of the animal. A rope is attached to a strong band of rubber holding the powerful jaws closed. This allows the animal to remain under control. With this release process, the alligator's jaws are kept safely closed until it is out of reach of the researchers. The alligator is on its own again, and we'll prepare to participate in a high-speed capture of waterfowl out on the pond. Our pond is always carefully monitored for any possible radioactive contamination. Here in the mid-portion of the reservoir, we are joining another biologist to see one of the ways radioactive contamination, if it occurred, could be detected in the wildlife. Biologist Dick Denny is ready to assist us in collecting for laboratory study some specimens of the most abundant waterfowl here, the American coot.
Conservation programs are concerned with the welfare of wildlife. One concern is whether migratory waterfowl, such as those which winter here on the Savannah River plant, are contaminated by pesticides or radioactive materials that may be inadvertently released from operating reactors. This is particularly important to determine in the case of game species, which may enter the human food chain.
The weight of all three of us in one boat would slow us down in our chase of the coots. So Dick Denny and I will go in one boat and Marlin in the other. It shouldn't take us more than a few minutes to reach the area where coots were sighted early this morning. The place where we saw the birds earlier is empty now, so we're swinging back to check a different location. There is no way that we could hope to catch ducks in this manner, as they would speedily leave us behind. But coots are not ducks. They take off slowly and cannot gain altitude swiftly, so they can be pursued. Once in a while, we're fortunate enough to be able to net a flying bird, but that doesn't happen too often. What we need to do is isolate an individual bird and continue chasing it until it tires and dives beneath the surface to escape. The coot's dive works to our advantage, as we'll be able to move back to where it went down and net it as it surfaces for air. Coots eat mostly aquatic vegetation, and if any radioactive material had been released into the water, it could be found in the food the coots eat, and subsequently might be detectable in the birds themselves. Coots represent only one of many species of animals in the area of Parr Pond that are checked in the laboratory for radiation content as a safeguard to all the wildlife in this vicinity. Coots are among those checked most frequently. While Dick Denny and I head for the lab to determine the level of radioactivity in this bird, Marlin will have an opportunity to observe some of the other wildlife research occurring along the shoreline.
A continuing study here is being conducted by a scientist who began working here as a graduate student and who is now a faculty member at Clemson University. He is Dr. Tim Fendley, who has been studying predators such as the bobcat. Earlier, bobcats were studied by him for radioactive contamination, and now he is studying their movements and behavior using radio telemetry techniques. Another predator in the Parr Pond system is the hooded merganser. Unlike most ducks here, it primarily eats fish, and thus may accumulate radioactive materials to higher levels than vegetarian species. They are not terribly abundant here, so have not yet been singled out for specific study. Another field of research involves the trapping of turtles by Dr. Whitfield Gibbon of the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory. His 10-year study concerns the growth and reproduction of freshwater turtles in areas affected by heated water from the reactors. It indicates that these aquatic reptiles grow much faster in such localities. His research may answer questions about whether or not this is detrimental to them. The studies being conducted here in the field, as well as those taking place inside the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory, are by scientists from the University of Georgia. They are under contract to the Department of Energy, but they publish their findings independently.
Back here at the main research building of the Ecology Laboratory, the waterfowl which we captured earlier out on the lake are checked for radioactive contamination.
The instruments we use in this lab are very delicate and sensitive to radioactive contamination. The coot is placed in a plastic bag to prevent both movement of the bird and its fouling of the chamber. This instrument, called a whole-body counter, is lined with lead bricks to screen out cosmic rays and extraneous radiation from outside sources. The counting of possible radioactivity begins by setting the controls and then activating the counting equipment. Now we have a little wait. Some 20 minutes later, the reading on the screen indicates that the bird contains some radioactive materials, but not above normal levels. In every one of the tests made on birds here, all have shown no more than trace levels of radioactivity, levels well within those considered safe for them or humans. The only step remaining is a return to Parr Pond to release the coot, after which we will continue the alligator studies.
To locate a specific alligator needed for further study, Dr. Brisbane and I, using radio telemetry equipment, joined in the search for a previously captured and released animal. The alligator we're tracking now was first caught several weeks ago and outfitted with a radio telemetry transmitter float similar to the one we put on the alligator earlier today. The signal is strengthening, and now the red float becomes visible. The float, devised by a graduate student here, greatly simplifies recapture of the animal since it is securely attached to the gator. Our presence does not alarm the casually moving alligator, which is still hidden beneath the surface. To recapture the alligator, the snare loop must be placed over the float. After the snare tightens on the cable attached to the alligator, the pole is released. The snare cable runs the length of the pole and attaches to a rope. Now the alligator is permitted to move along easily until we can find a stretch of shore that is open enough so we can pull him up on the beach and work on him. Because the alligator is large and powerful, it is not possible for us to bring it in without some additional help. Fortunately, we've come ashore fairly close to our field laboratory, and so while a call for assistance is made, we'll get the free end of the rope securely anchored to a tree. Now we're almost ready to bring the animal in. So far, he's been very docile, but that's misleading. The real struggle is still ahead. We're now joined by University of Georgia research technicians Garfield Keaton and Fred Stone. And with their arrival, the activity here begins in earnest.
We need this alligator to determine whether a problem exists in the male reproductive cycle at Parr Pond. The program devised earlier by my graduate students involves taking periodic samples from males like this to determine when viable sperm appear. That may occur prematurely in these heated waters before the females in the cooler part of Parr Pond are ready to breed. Securing the alligator's snout, first with a snare cable, is extremely important as a safety measure. Alligators do not have a great deal of power for opening the mouth against pressure, but quite the opposite is true when it comes to the closing of the mouth. At that time, the gator's jaws have enormous strength. As soon as we have brought the animal in close enough, we can help prevent further struggling by placing a blindfold over its eyes. Next, a strong band of rubber is snugged over the snout to take the place of the snare cable. Turning the huge animal over onto his back is a difficult and sometimes dangerous undertaking, and the powerful tail must be firmly pinned at all times. At the same time, we're always careful not to hurt the animal. Only by turning the animal over is his vent exposed so that the sperm sample we need can be taken. This is done by inserting a glass rod into the vent and then extracting it and rubbing the material that's removed onto a glass slide. This sample will be examined under a microscope at the nearby field laboratory immediately after the release of the alligator. The animal is never held any longer than absolutely necessary. The release, as always, is a critical procedure. The alligator is free to back into deeper water as soon as the blindfold is removed. If our tests show viable sperm, we won't have to catch him again. If not, we'll catch him again next week.
American alligator has at times been endangered and threatened with extinction. Studies on alligators, such as those conducted here by the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory, will help to assure the continuing survival of this species in our nuclear age. Nuclear energy production seems to be gaining a permanent place in our civilization, but not without concern for its effects on our environment. Not all the results are in yet from the intensive scientific studies being made at such nuclear establishments as the Savannah River plant. Yet the research being done here has thus far shown that while trace amounts of radioactive material may be accumulated by some wildlife living on the plant's site, those amounts are well within the standards set for protection of human health. Despite optimism engendered by the early studies, caution is still paramount, and close monitoring of species is required before man can be assured that the production of nuclear energy can continue to be safe for all inhabitants of the wild kingdom.